For those of you unfamiliar, Adderall is commonly referred to as the college crack, and according to RxList.com, some of the common side effects of Adderall is nervousness, restlessness, excitability, agitation, things like that. And the reason I use this example is to segue into my main topic, which is actually externalities. And I use this because externalities are essentially side effects. But instead of affecting the person who's taking the medication, it's affecting a third party or a bystander. So what is an externality? My name is Ashlyn, and I'm going to define what it is and provide a few examples to better explain it. So according to Investopedia.com, an externality is a consequence of an economic activity experienced by unrelated third parties. It can be either positive or negative. So to start off with some positive examples, one of the more common few ones given in our textbook are these two up here. And our textbook is Microeconomics by Eric Chang. And he talks about how a college education benefits society in the fact that those who are on campus are able to learn different things and experience new things, especially with the 2016 presidential election. A lot of campuses were offering ways to educate their students so that they're not voting based on the media or by their parents, they're voting based on an educated decision, and that creates a better operating democracy. And in looking at the production of an apple farmer, so apple farmers produce apple trees which produce apple blossoms, and then bees actually pollinate these, but the bees aren't the ones who benefit, it's the beekeepers, because the bees are creating more nectar, creating more honey, and this improves the business of the beekeepers who were ultimately unrelated to the apple farmers in the first place. So looking at some negative examples, I think everybody's familiar with secondhand smoking, and it's relatively easy to say that smoking has negative effects on your body. And secondhand smoking is just as harmful, and according to the CDC, 2,500,000 people have died since 1964, which isn't exactly a huge number. It's approximately 47,000 people a year, but that's 47,000 people a year who weren't intending on dying from smoking. And it causes heart disease, lung cancer, and stroke in adults, and any type of asthma or inflammatory lung problems in children. And then also with oil manufacturers, when oil spills occur in the ocean, it affects the birds and mammals in it, and according to the NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, birds and mammals are unable to insulate themselves and will ultimately die from hypothermia because of their exposure to the oil in the waters. So that would be a negative bystander even though it's not a human. And a specific externality that I would like to focus on, because I'm very passionate about animal rights, and according to the EPA, greenhouse gases are defined as gases that trap heat in the atmosphere. And normally when people think of greenhouse gases, they're thinking CO2, they're thinking of car emissions, things like that. And what a lot of people don't know is that methane is just as harmful as CO2, it's just not as plentiful. And the EPA also states that 10% of the atmosphere is methane, and then 10% of that 10% derives from agriculture and from manure management. And so those who eat meat and those who don't eat meat are the ones who are affected by this, because the United States in particular overproduces a lot of meat in their packaging factories and things like that, and a lot of it gets wasted in the first place. But the problem happens at the actual farms where there's thousands of cows, pigs, all types of things who are just producing manure, and it's not being stored properly, it's not being taken care of properly, and then the methane from that agricultural process gets released into the air. And there are a few basic laws in place in order to control manure, but ultimately they're not doing a lot. And although it is a small percent, it's easy to control with better laws, or like regulating the amount of animals that are sent through farms and things like that. And ultimately controlling that smaller percent is just a baby step to reducing the human footprint that we have on the world. And in conclusion, externalities are an important aspect of economics, and understanding them helps companies with controlling their costs, because if a company can understand that they're going to have a negative impact, they need to be able to either prepare for those costs or try to avoid them in the first place. So if no one has any questions, thank you for listening.